Hi, fourth graders. Today we're talking about Investigation 9, Investigating Fractions with Manipulatives. So you're going to need a few things. First of all, you're going to need something to work on. So a piece of notebook paper or something to keep track of your information and work on. And then you're going to need lesson activity from your packet that your parents got home a couple weeks ago. There should be 3 colored pages in there with lesson activities. One of them is the orange page, which you can find the halves on. There should be 2 halves. Lesson activity 37. The second one would be the purple page that has fourths on them, so 4 fourths. This is lesson activity 38. And then you'll need the green page, which has eighths on them, which is lesson activity 39. And you can take those 3 pages and cut out all the pieces. So 2 halves, 4 fourths, 8 eighths, cut them all out, and you'll use those to finish the activities for today. So we'll do lesson activity 1 together, and then you'll go and do activity 2 independently and turn in activity 2 through email or however you've been turning them in. So page 574 is lesson or activity 1. Go ahead and start there. And you can just use your papers to go with us. Okay, so another name for 1/4 is a quarter. How many quarters of a circle does it take to form a whole circle? So use your fraction manipulatives. 1/4 is a quarter. How many quarters make a whole? Okay, so you should have seen that 4 quarters make a whole circle. So on your paper, that's what you should draw. Number 2, fit 2 quarter circles together to form a half circle. That is show that 2 fourths equals 1/2. So if you put 2 fourths together, you should find that it is the same as 1/2. Number 3, how many fourths equal 1 whole and 1/4? So how many fourths would you have to have a whole circle and then 1/4? Okay, how many fourths would you have total? Okay, here we'd have the whole circle and 1/4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4. Number 4. This number sentence shows how to make a whole circle using half circles. Okay, so a number sentence that shows a whole circle using halves. So 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1 whole. Your job is to write a number sentence that shows how to make a whole circle using quarter circles. So this same kind of idea that's here, except for instead of halves, use quarters. So pause and go ahead. Okay, and you should have had 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 1 whole. Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 fourths to get 1 whole circle. How many half circles equal 1 1/2 circles? So how many to get 1 full circle and another half? How many half circles would you have? So think about your half circle manipulatives. How many would you need to have 1 whole and another half? Okay, 1, 2, 3 halves equals 1 1/2 circles. 6, 4 half circles make how many whole circles? So if I have 4 halves, how many whole circles would I have? Go ahead and make your answer. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 half circles, which makes 2 whole. Arrange 1/2, 1/8, and 1/4 in order from least to greatest. Using your fraction manipulatives, organize 1/2, 1/8, and 1/4 from the smallest to the biggest pieces. This guy. Okay, so if I was arranging it from the least to the greatest, which one of my pieces would be the smallest? That would be the 1/8. The next largest would be 1/4. And the largest piece would be 1/2. So 1/8, 1/4, 1/2. Number 8, arrange 3/8, 3/4, and 1/2 in order to form from greatest to least, so the biggest to the smallest pieces. If I have 3/8, 3/4, and 1/2. So again, use your fraction manipulatives, put together 3/8, 3/4, and 1/2. See which one is the biggest. Okay, so here we have 3/4, 1/2, and 3/8. And if you look at these are in order from greatest to least. 3/4 is larger than 1/2, and 1/2 is larger than 3/8. Okay, so that should be the order that you had written down. 3/4, 1/2, 3/8 in order from greatest to least. Okay, number 9, compare 2 halves to 2/4. So here I have 2 halves, and here I have 2/4. Which of these is the greater amount? Would you rather have, if this was a pizza, would you rather have 2 halves or 2/4? I think you would rather have the 2 halves. That is the greater piece. Okay, number 10, compare 4/8 to 3/8. So here we have 4/8, and here we have 3/8, and which one of those is larger? Okay, continuing on. Number 11. If the denominators of two fractions are the same, how can we determine which fraction is larger and which one is smaller? So here I have eighths. Both of these pictures are showing eighths. This one is showing 2/8. And this one is 3/8. Okay, so now go back to the question again. If the denominators, that's the bottom number, are the same, so here we both have eighths, how can we determine which fraction is larger and which one is smaller? So this is 2/8 and this is 3/8. Which of those numbers is showing the larger amount? Okay, it is 3/8. So now looking at the numerator, what do you notice? This is the larger of my pictures. This is the larger of the numbers. So thinking about that, your answer to this question, how can we determine which fraction is larger and which one is smaller if the denominators are the same? If the denominators are the same, then the fraction with the greater numerator is the greater fraction. So if the bottom number is the same, the denominator is the same, look at the top number, and the bigger top number means the bigger the fraction. Okay. If the numerators of two fractions are the same, how can we determine which fraction is larger and which is smaller? So here I have 1/4, and here I have 1/8. Okay, and notice that the numerator is the same. The top number is the same on both of these, 1/4 and 1/8. But which of these is a larger amount? That is the 1/4. So if the two numbers on the top are the same, how can we determine which fraction is larger and which one is smaller? Well, noticing here, if the denominator is the smaller number, then the fraction piece is bigger. 1/4 is bigger than an 1/8. So if the denominator is smaller, then the fraction is bigger. Okay, if the numerators are the same, then the fraction with the greater denominator is the smaller fraction. So the greater denominator, the smaller the fractional piece. Okay, manipulatives can help us reduce fractions. When we reduce a fraction, we do not change the size of the fraction. We just use smaller numbers to name the fraction. For example, we may reduce 2/4 to 1/2. Here I have 2/4 and here I have 1/2. They're both the same amount. They're the same portion of a whole, but 1/2 uses smaller numbers or fewer pieces to name the fraction. So, okay, so 1/2 and 2/4 is the same, but 1/2 is using smaller numbers. If a fraction can't be reduced, it's in the lowest terms. Okay, so for numbers 13 through 21, you are reducing the fractions to the lowest terms possible. So how much, if I have 2/4, so I have two of these, can I make it to a reduced fraction? Can I say something is smaller than 2/4, a smaller number? Okay, so reducing that fraction, I can say 2/4, a smaller fraction would be 1/2. Same amount, but that's the simplified version. Okay, if I have 2/8, that would be the same as having 1/4. If I had 4/8, so 4 of these pieces, what would be the same as 4/8? 1/2. If I had 6/8, so 6 of these pieces, what would that look like? You can use your fraction manipulatives to help you figure out what would 6/8 be the same as. 6/8 would be the same as having 3/4. Okay, if I have 1/4 and I add 2 more fourths in, what would I have? 1/4 and 2 more fourths. Use your fraction manipulatives. 3/4. If I have 2/8 and add 3 more eighths to it, use your fraction manipulatives. Your total should be 5/8. If you have 3/4 and take away 2/4, how much are you left with? Subtracting 3/4 minus 2/4, what are you left with? Use your fraction manipulatives. Okay, 1/4. If I have 4/8 and I take away 1/8, what do I have left? 3/4. Okay, if I have 2/2 and take away 1/2, what am I left with? 1/2. Okay, your job for the next part is to go and do activity 2 on your own using, you can just use a homework page to complete it or a notebook, whichever, and then just email your answers to that. But activity 2, you're going to use your fraction manipulative pages. And on those pieces, you should see something that looks like this. So you have on my 1/2 page, and your 1/2 pictures pieces, you have the words or the numbers 1/2 as a fraction, 5/10 as a decimal, and 50% as the percent. Then if you look at your 1/4, each of the 1/4 pieces would say 1/4 as a fraction, 25/100ths as a decimal, and 25% as the percent. And then if you look at the 1/8, you have 1/8 as the fraction, 125,000ths as your decimal, and 12.5%. So use those to answer the questions on activity 2. So activity 2 starts with number 22 and then goes all the way through 39. So you can either renumber a homework page or just use a notebook or whatever you choose to do this on, and then submit when you're finished. Okay, good luck.